On the kind of nascent bipartisan talks related to kind of a more scaled-back, targeted approach on the Electoral Count Act, your colleague, Mr. Bates, was quite definitive that wasn't really an option the White House was pursuing right now. It certainly was no substitute, I think, to use his words. As part of the reason for being so definitive on that is that you don't want an off-ramp for two Democratic senators in particular to point to instead of considering a rules change to the Senate.
I've always known my colleague, Mr. Bates, to be definitive. I don't know if you all experienced that as well, but I think what our position is from here, and what the position of many advocates for voting rights and many Democrats on the Hill is that it is not a substitute. And we should not treat it like a substitute, because the two bills that the president will talk about tomorrow have essential components of them that will protect people's fundamental rights, expand access, ensure that people know that when they vote it will count and not be overturned. And we want to be very clear with the public that it is not a replacement or a substitute.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has declared war on this effort over the course of the last several weeks on the Senate floor. His office put out a lengthy memo last night that said, in part, Democrats will try to use, quote, fake hysteria to break the Senate and silence millions of Americans' voices so they can take over elections. The president's been a little sharper towards Republicans. Do you have a response to that memo, and Leader McConnell?
It is pretty ironic. If making it more difficult to vote is not silencing the voices of people, words that Senator McConnell used, I don't know what is. I also think it's important to note here, if you look back at Leader McConnell's record from the past, he has a pretty strong record of supporting voting rights. And what has changed? That's a question for him, less for us. But I will give you a few examples. 2004, Leader McConnell. I cannot think of any reason why anyone on either side of the aisle would oppose the protection of the franchise of all Americans. 2006, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 represents one of this country's greatest steps forward. Obviously, I rise today in support of its reauthorization. Again, 2006, he wrote in his memoir that he was overwhelmed to witness such a moment in history when the Voting Rights Act passed in 1965. So I use those examples to remind people that this should not be a partisan issue, protecting people's fundamental voting rights, that people should be protecting them and standing up for Americans of all political stripes. That is what we are working to do. And what we're talking about here is fighting against the big lie that was perpetuated after January 6th, around January 6th, I should say, by far too many Republicans in Congress, and it has resulted in states across the country putting in place more laws that are making it more difficult to people to exercise their rights. We don't think that is right. We don't think that is a political issue. It is a fundamental right in this country, and it should be.